Hi, I'm attorney John Mangan. In my approximately 15 years or so of practice in the area of trusts and estates, I've gotten a lot of questions from clients and potential clients on irrevocable trusts. I've also had the opportunity to assist many of our clients in creating irrevocable trusts. So what I'd like to talk with you today about are the reasons why someone might want to set up an irrevocable trust, some of the advantages of doing so, and also some of the disadvantages or areas that you need to be aware of if you are considering setting up an irrevocable trust. So when it comes to the reasons why someone might set up an irrevocable trust, there are really two primary reasons. The first has to do with asset protection. So the person that sets up any trust, we would typically refer to them as a grantor or a settlor. And when the grantor transfers assets, money, whatever it might be, could be real estate, when they transfer assets into the irrevocable trust, that irrevocable trust now can provide a lot of asset protection for the trust beneficiaries, whether they be the grantor's spouse, children, grandchildren, or whoever the loved ones of the grantor are. The other main reason why someone may choose to set up an irrevocable trust has to do with tax reasons, primarily estate taxes. So let me give you an example here. Let's just imagine that you've got, say, $1 million sitting in a brokerage account, and you wish to transfer that into an irrevocable trust. Now, it's worth $1 million today when it goes into the trust, but let's suppose that appreciation occurs and that account is now worth $2 million at the time that the grantor dies. So we've had $1 million in appreciation that occurred within the trust. All of that $1 million in appreciation, that takes place outside of the grantor's taxable estate. So when the grantor dies and we need to look at whether any estate tax is owed to the federal government, only one of that $2 million is going to factor into that calculation. And if that brokerage account continues to grow over time, say from $2 million to $3, $4, $5 million, or whatever the number might be, all of that additional appreciation, so long as it's taking place inside of the trust, can be outside of anyone's taxable estate. So it's a very powerful way to build generational wealth. Now, speaking of taxes, one topic that I want to touch on is income taxes. If you've done any research on irrevocable trusts, you may be aware that trusts generally are going to pay income tax at a much higher rate than individuals. Now, with that being said, there are ways that we can structure an irrevocable trust so that the income tax consequences flow back to the grantor of the trust as an individual. So by doing so, we can create a much more favorable income tax situation than what you might have read about in a lot of irrevocable trusts. Okay, so now that you've heard about some of the advantages or reasons why someone might want to set up an irrevocable trust, let's take a look at some of the potential disadvantages so that you're fully informed. As you might imagine from the term irrevocable, it's not necessarily easy to make changes to this type of trust. However, it's not impossible either. So, for example, there are techniques or features that may be added to an irrevocable trust that lend it some flexibility. Things like powers of appointment or a trust protector. In addition, we have some flexibility through Florida law, whether it be through case law or statutory law, where trusts may be modified under certain circumstances. But obviously, it's not easy to make these changes, so that's something to think about. The other disadvantage to be aware of is that there is a loss of control once assets, money, real estate, whatever it might be, is put into the irrevocable trust. So prior to that transfer, of course, the individual grantor is the owner, and he or she can do what they choose to with those assets. But once they go into the irrevocable trust, it's now the trustee who's in charge of those assets. So as you can see, it's really critical to name someone as trustee that you have a high degree of faith, trust, and confidence in. This might be a trusted family member, perhaps an adult child, sometimes even a spouse, or it might be a professional fiduciary, someone like a bank trust company, an attorney, or some other trusted advisor. So as you can see, when it comes to the topic of irrevocable trusts, it's really important that you choose to work with an attorney or a law firm that has a high level of experience and expertise in this area, because there are a lot of complications and potential pitfalls. If our office can be of any help in this respect, please feel free to reach out today, either by phone or by filling out one of the contact forms on our website. We look forward to hearing from you.